Exclusive.
Hunt for bikie kidnap victim.
I saw lifeless body stuffed into car.
His legs kept falling out of the door while they were trying to put him in.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry and welcome back to Media Watch after a long summer holiday, in which I'm afraid to say some criminals in Queensland have clearly been busy.
A man told the Gold Coast Bulletin he saw 5 bikies move a lifeless body from one car to another at Arundel yesterday. Police launched a major investigation and found a vehicle with traces of blood inside.
That front-page screamer in the Gold Coast Bulletin, the Friday before last, told us that the paper's key witness to that terrifying abduction was scared out of his wits.
Still shaking hours after the incident, the businessman, who was in fear of his life and asked his name not be revealed, said he could not believe the underbelly scene that unfolded in front of him.
Yet, strangely enough, another witness quoted in the bulletin said the bikies ended up laughing. And they weren't the only ones, because by the time the paper hit the streets, Queensland police were already pouring a huge bucket of cold water on the story, by telling the media it was all a false alarm.
Following police inquiries, detectives located the man safe and well and are satisfied the incident was non-suspicious.
Whoops! No kidnap, no disappearance, and obviously no murder. But the bulletin wasn't giving up so easily on its front-page scoop. And next day, Saturday, the author of his exclusive, Jack Harbour, hit back by telling readers
the kidnapping of a Gold Coast man by 5 bikies that led to fears of a murder has been linked to a love triangle.
I love that, don't you? Led to fears of a murder. Well, it certainly did at the bulletin, even if they had been allayed. But there was more.
Police say bash victim won't talk.
Because the victim, who is also a bikie, refuses to make a complaint, police are powerless to lay charges.
But hold on a moment. Charges for what? Because Queensland Police tell Media Watch there was no bashing and there was no kidnap. And they'd made this clear as soon as the Friday front page was published, telling the media
the man was simply intoxicated, with a possible toe injury.
Police also say that later that day, the bulletin's Jack Harbour spoke to the detective superintendent and the senior detective,
who separately reiterated that the matter was non-suspicious, the man only had a minor toe injury, and that those questioned about the incident were not OMCG members.
And what does not OMCG members mean? Well, it means they weren't bikies from outlaw motorcycle gangs. So, that's wrong too. And bizarrely, the Gold Coast Bulletin published an AAP story online on Friday, 2 hours after its exclusive, which reported this.
Queensland murder victim just had broken toe.
So, we asked Jack Harbour and the Bulletin what evidence they had that their exclusive and the follow-up weren't just a great big beat-up. And they told us they had 4 witnesses, whom they invited us to ring. So we did. The first 3 told us they had not seen the incident. One had seen video footage, but it did not confirm the story. And the only genuine eyewitness told us his story had been twisted.
It was a bit distorted that I was hiding in the factory and I was too frightened to come back to work. All of that was completely made up. None of that was true at all.
But that's not all that annoyed him.
The main thing that concerned me, which I was disappointed about, was that it said the witness saw 5 bikies. That was completely untrue.
So, we put those comments, and the fact that the witnesses had not seen the, quote, kidnap, to the bulletin. We also asked them why they ran the second story after all the police denials, which is really unforgivable. They declined to answer our detailed questions and told us simply,
we stand by our publication.
Well, we think that's extraordinary. But we'll let you decide. But now, to more weighty matters, and the latest episode in a long-running saga which never quite reaches the climax.
Media reforms on their way.
Yes, it's happening at last. After many false alarms, Communications Minister Mitch Fifield told ABC Radio a couple of weeks ago that he's finally going to take the jump.
I'm keen to introduce into the Parliament in the first part of this year media laws which will reflect the world that we currently live in.
And it's certainly not before time. Australia still relies on media laws written 24 years ago, when mobile phones looked like this. There was also no internet for the vast bulk of the population, no streaming over the net, and no Netflix, Stan or Presto. And Clio magazine, which will close this month, had 322,000 happy readers. But how do you bring the laws up to date? And what, if anything, do you put in their place? Well, according to the Minister, there are two key rules that are likely to be scrapped.
The reach rule and also the 2 out of 3 rule, as it's known, the two that I'm particularly looking at.
The 2 out of 3 rule currently stops anyone owning TV, newspapers and radio in the same market. And if it goes, as almost all media proprietors want, we're likely to see some mergers, like Fairfax Media teaming up with Channel 9 or with Channel 7, and perhaps News Corp and Channel 10 doing the same. And that will mean even greater concentration of media ownership than we have now. The government says we shouldn't worry about that. The internet now provides all the competition and choice we need. But many media experts, like Professors Tim Dwyer and Michael Fraser, are concerned.
There's going to be a reduction in news source diversity in Australia, and that's not a good thing. People need to have a wider range of news sources to get different points of view, especially in an election year.
I don't agree with the basic assumptions that have been put forward by government. It's important to maintain the media ownership laws we have to ensure diversity in the mainstream media.
The second rule that's even more likely to go is the reach rule, that supposedly stops any one TV network broadcasting to more than 75% of Australians. The big problem with this is it no longer works, as Channel 7 has demonstrated by streaming its TV programmes to mobile phones, tablets and computers in areas where it's banned from broadcasting. Getting rid of this one will likely produce more mergers between the regional networks, Prime, Win and Southern Cross, and their capital city counterparts, 7, 9 and 10, bringing once again more concentration of media power. But it's not yet done. Previous attempts to change media laws have ended up in the too hard basket, and these could too. To get through Parliament, they'll need support from the National Party and 6 of the 8 crossbenchers in the Senate, assuming the Greens and Labor are opposed. And they are likely to set tough conditions, as the Minister readily admits.
What it really comes down to, I think, where the rubber really hits the road is the issue of protection for local content, and what most people mean when they say that is protection for local news service.
So, what does local news on commercial TV currently look like? Well, if you get it, it can look like this.
Hopefully I don't lose the house. That's the main thing I'm thinking.
Fires, things get burnt and destroyed and it's gone.
But not everyone is guaranteed to receive local news. TV stations in Tasmania, most of Victoria, large parts of New South Wales and much of coastal Queensland are required by their licence conditions to produce at least 60 minutes of local news a week. But in Western Australia, South Australia and the Northern Territory, there are no local content rules because no one got round to making them. Bizarre, eh? So, will these areas now be given protection? Almost certainly not. But does it work anyway? Last year, Win closed its newsroom in Mildura in Victoria, which was not protected. It also scrapped local news in Riverland and Mount Gambier in South Australia in 2013 and across regional WA in 2012, where again there was no protection. But protected areas have often done no better, even though local content rules are being observed. Last year, Win closed its Mackay newsroom in Queensland, and since 2000, Prime has closed regional newsrooms in Newcastle, Wollongong, Ballarat, Bendigo and Gippsland. And wherever it happens, it hurts, or so local mayors tell Media Watch.
The loss of the Win TV news service has made a big difference. Nearly everybody watched it. It also provided a form of balance in that the newspaper might take one view, but the TV could take another.
Everyone used to sit down for dinner at the same time and watch the news, so we knew what was going on in our local area. It was really disappointing when we lost that.
The problem in WA particularly is the isolation factor. You're out of sight, out of mind in a lot of ways, and it's going to get worse if we keep seeing the local media leave.
So, can you halt the process or reverse it? The regional networks have told the government they're happy to guarantee that local TV news services will not be cut as a result of any mergers that a change in media laws may bring. But Win's CEO, Andrew Lancaster, admitted to ABC Online a few months ago that more regional newsroom closures are likely, especially if there's no media reform.
There's a degree of inevitability there, yes, It's something that we have to do and we're constantly reviewing, and more so in the face of increased programming costs, reviewing the amount of news that we can provide in regional Australia.
And a former national news director at WIN, Stuart Richmond, argues that in the long run, local news will only survive where it makes commercial sense.
The simple answer to a complex question is that networks will commit to the regional news status quo as long as it suits them, and as long as it is not a drain on finite financial resources.
So, is there a way to beat the market and ensure the regions get what they want? Nationals leader Warren Truss believes there is.
ABC should provide local television news. Warren Truss.
I think the ABC should have a presence in regional communities that is capable of delivering not just radio news services, but also television news services.
Now, it seems the ABC is keen on the idea, but it wants more money to do it, as you can see from this inspired ABC leak to The Australian.
The Australian Broadcasting Corporation is understood to be plotting an ambitious bid for fresh funding in this year's budget to ramp up news services in regional Australia.
So, could regional Australia soon be seeing something like this back on their screens?
Good evening, I'm Wayne Shearman. On the subject of final episodes, this is the last ABC regional television news broadcast for Central Queensland and the West.
The ABC ditched regional TV news bulletins 31 years ago, in March 1985, when it scrapped more than a dozen nightly local services across Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. We can't see Auntie bringing them back, but the ABC does have 47 regional offices and 352 content makers around the regions, so it's clearly capable of doing something. Although, of course, the question would be, who pays? Mitch Fifield and Warren Truss have both told The Australian the ABC should find the cash.
Mr Truss said the organisation should allocate regional newsrooms more money from its total annual budget of $1.03 billion. I would have thought that would have been possible.
But WIN's former national news director, who knows what these things cost, is sceptical.
It is simplistic in the extreme to suggest local news TV bulletins for the ABC, unless a government is willing to commit vast sums of taxpayer dollars to pay for such a service. But maybe there is a solution. Richmond suggests that regional TV news from the ABC or the commercials could be delivered over the net, filmed with smartphones, with the presenter doing links out on location. And he adds, there's nothing stopping it being presented at the same time every day for half an hour, and all as cheap as chips. We'll see if that idea gets any traction. But we suspect it's much closer to what the ABC has in mind. But now to the Queen, or the Queen of British cooking, Nigella Lawson, who has been in Australia spruiking her latest book and getting some gushing headlines.
What a treat! Lisa Wilkinson has a girl crush moment as she poses for a beaming selfie with Nigella Lawson after the celebrity chef dropped by her home kitchen.
And as so often with Nigella, it wasn't the food that some reporters were fixed on, so much as her ravishing appearance.
Wearing her brunette locks loose and in a tumbling centre parting, Nigella opted for a pale makeup palette to complement her alabaster skin.
The Kitchen Queen also starred on the front page of the Financial Review, complete with picture, of course, where she admitted,
I haven't got any business savvy whatsoever.
The goddess of comfort food says her plate is full enough.
But she was also busy on radio.
I have no time for foams and gels.
Yes.
But then nor do I want to go to a restaurant with foams and gels either.
And on TV.
You don't want one of those biscuits that is hardy enough to withstand any amount of immersion.
The domestic goddess, as she's often called, did around 10 other major interviews, including a session with the ABC's Annabelle Crabb at the Opera House. But not one of them touched on allegations in a recent court case, when the headlines were rather more salacious.
Hi, Jella. She was off her head on drugs, poisoned her daughter, and trashed her life.
Nigella Lawson took cocaine and other drugs every day for years, court told.
Nigella Lawson photos. See shocking pictures of Charles Saatchi repeatedly squeezing TV chef's throat.
They're not things she wants to talk about, perhaps, but they're surely worth a question, given that Lawson's drug use saw her briefly banned from the United States. Yet no one dared to go there. And why? Because the publicists at Random House asked them not to.
We politely request that there be no questions of a personal nature. This extends to her children and upbringing.
Now, we know these deals go on, even if journalists rarely reveal them. But we're shocked and saddened that everyone so meekly complied. Well, everyone except one.